We are back with a Fox News alert. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries speaking right now as House lawmakers are getting set to vote on President Trump's big, beautiful bill. Possibly any minute now, although Jeffries could very much take his time during his speech.
We're going to get into that now with senior congressional correspondent Chad Pergram live on Capitol Hill with more. Chad, how long could this go on conceivably?
Good morning. Well, we think that they're getting toward the end of the overall debate, and you alluded to something here. Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader, is on the floor right now. He started his speech about 4 or 5 minutes ago. They give members just 1 minute for most speeches on the House floor, but they give top congressional leaders what we call a magic minute. In other words, they don't gavel them down after a minute here. And so he might go on for a while. We don't know if this is going to be a 15-minute speech, a half-hour speech. I remember John Boehner, he was then the minority leader in the House of Representatives. This was on the cap and trade bill some years ago, back in 2009. It was called the filibaner, not a filibuster, but a filibaner, where he talked for about an hour and a half. Kevin McCarthy set the record for the longest House speech back in November of 2021. That was 8 hours and 21 minutes. So conceivably, he could really delay this, but we don't think he's going to go quite that long. They are getting toward the end of this debate, and I would think sometime after the top of the hour, maybe after 6 o'clock Eastern, they would get to this vote series. The vote that we care about on the big, beautiful bill would be the second one in the series. And we think that the magic number, if the overnight vote totals here are kind of our guide, might be 215 yay votes. There was a grand total of 429 members who cast ballots overnight on a test vote here, so 215 might be the magic number. They can only lose 3 votes on the Republican side if all House members vote. Thomas Massie, Republican of Kentucky, he was the only nay in that overnight vote series, and we know that he's the only firm no tonight. Now, again, so they've been debating this bill through the overnight hours. They want to get this done today. The goal by House Speaker Mike Johnson was to finish this by Memorial Day. And part of the issue was they knew that if they continued to talk about this and just, let members kind of weigh in, they would never quite get there. So what you do is you bring in the president at the last minute, which is what President Trump did earlier this week. He came to Capitol Hill to meet with House Republicans. There was a meeting at the White House with the Speaker of the House and President Trump and also members of the Freedom Caucus yesterday. Kind of let the president be the closer, and then you call the vote, and if there are still outstanding members, you can go to them and lean on them and say, are you really going to oppose the president's agenda, or we'll get the president on the phone, and you can take the call in the cloakroom if that's the case. But they think they're there. Overnight, Mike Johnson, the Speaker, he introduced something called a manager's amendment. Now, that's where they make final changes to the bill to try to sweeten the bill a little bit to coax some of these skeptical members across the finish line, and they seem to be in that range right now. A couple of things that they tightened up on that was the SALT tax reduction. That's for high tax states. They raised that threshold to $40,000 for high tax states for up to people who make up to $500,000 a year. They also eliminated green energy tax credits. Those will go away in 2028, and also in 2026, December of 2026. That's when these Medicaid work mandates will kick in. So House Speaker Mike Johnson said, okay, we're going to kind of wrap those things up, and then we've kind of tightened up the bill. We're going to expect you to vote on it. So we expect that vote sometime after 6 o'clock Eastern time. If it passes, then the next stop is the Senate, and that's probably going to take the entire month of June. The goal there by the Senate Majority Leader John Thune is 4th of July, and then they have to blend these bills. They have to put these bills, what the House passes, almost inevitably what the Senate passes is going to be different, and put them in a congressional Cuisinart and mix them together and come out with a final product. The goal then would be to have this done by August, because that is when the Department of the Treasury says we're going to hit the debt ceiling. And keep in mind that this present bill raises the debt ceiling by about $4 trillion, guys.
Yeah. So the bottom line, Chad, is that it all comes down to this moment. It's go time. After all of this discussion on the big, beautiful bill and what the House is going to do, we will find out in just a few hours here. How do you think Mike Johnson?
Less than that.
Yeah. How do you think Mike Johnson is feeling right now? If this is going to the House floor right now, do you think he is confident that he has the votes to pass it?
Yeah, usually House leaders, they don't put something on the floor unless you think you have the votes, or sometimes you can grow the vote on the floor. In other words, you think you are within range. This is something that Tom DeLay, the former majority leader from Texas, used to do, where they knew they had a couple of outstanding people, call the vote, and then say, okay, guys, we need you to vote yes, and they would grow that vote total on the floor. We think that they're pretty close right now. And Mike Johnson just throughout the week exuded confidence in the fact that they seem to get the Freedom Caucus involved yesterday. That meeting at the White House with them and the Speaker and Steve Scalise, the majority leader, seemed to go very well. So they think they're pretty much there. And again, look at that test vote. Only one Republican no on the test vote overnight, Thomas Massey of Kentucky, who's been no almost since the beginning.
Yeah, he's never going to be a yes here.
He was no before he was born. Chad, this isn't a question, this is a commentary. I like that phrase you use, Cuisinart, because if you thought this process in May was tough, just wait for June. When you try to blend these bills, that is going to be something else. And to that point, I understand that right now Congress is very distracted by the big, beautiful bill, as they should be. But let's focus on this for a moment. Senator Ron Johnson telling Axios he is opening an investigation into the Biden White House's handling of Joe Biden's health. The viewers at home can see it right there on the screen. My question for you is, with the distraction of the big, beautiful bill and everything else that's going on, what is the appetite for truly getting to the bottom of what Joe Biden's health was while in office, this overarching question of who was running our country? Or is this going to be a situation that we always see in Congress where they're all into it the week that the news comes out, and then gradually over time these investigations go away and Congress gets distracted by the next big shiny object in the room? Is there staying power here, Chad?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of appetite on the Republican side of the aisle. Democrats obviously want to get past that. Some of this really is about 2028 to also determine maybe what potential presidential candidates. Vice President Harris knew about that. Maybe Pete Buttigieg if he were to run. But the risk for the Republicans is if they focus too much on that, and that distracts maybe from success with the big, beautiful bill.
Yeah, and Senator Johnson says he plans to request information from a couple dozen people who have had or should have had contact with Biden. He says we have to, who was running the government? So more to come on that front. Chad, we know that you're running on a sleep deficit here, but we appreciate your expertise as always this morning. Thank you so much.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.